Just a disclaimer, this isn't the type of story to have you on the edge of your seat. It is, however, one of the creepiest occurrences I've ever had, and this just goes to show you how the comfort of your own home can be dangerous. This happened about a year ago, back when I had graduated from college. I had just gotten a paid internship for my field of study as a computer technician. My duties were to basically assist companies with basic computer errors they may face. It was an easy and well-rewarding job for me, as I loved computers ever since I was a kid. At the time, inflation was through the roof, so I was extremely grateful for this job. The only part I didn't like about it were the hours. I had to get up at around 11 p.m. and work well into the night till around 3 a.m., so whenever I got home, I would always be tired. During this internship, I've been renting out this small one-bedroom home as a place to stay. I earned enough to pay for it, but my parents were proud of me for getting this job, which made them pay for half. One night, I had been at work during the middle of my shift when I get a call from my boss. He had told me that he was suspending operations until the next day due to a possible storm emergency. This resulted in me having to clock out and go home for the night. As you could imagine, I was drained from working and instantly fell asleep listening to the falling rain. I'd say I slept for a good 3 hours or so when I awoke to a noise from my room. It sounded similar to a knocking sound, but much more sudden and fast. I glanced over at the clock. It was 4:07 a.m. and was still pouring outside. Figuring it was likely hail hitting the roof, I disregarded it and tried my best to go back to sleep. However, not even a minute later, I hear the same noise again, this time much louder. I felt my blood run cold as I heard this and realized it was coming from my wall. I was almost certain there was an animal living in my walls, as I don't live too far from a wooded area. I slowly get up from my bed and put my sliders on and put my ear up against the wall. It was quiet for a good minute before the unexpected happened. A knock louder than ever hit the wall, where I stumbled back where I just so happened to look up at the air vent. A quick flash of lightning illuminated what appeared to be someone's eyes looking at me through the vent. What disturbed me the most was their face. It was pale, and this person didn't appear to have any eyebrows. That was the best description I could give, as they then ducked back down inside of the wall. I locked eye contact with this person for a good second before running out of the house to call the police. Thankfully, the cops in my city are the type that takes their job seriously, so they were able to get here quickly. One officer stayed with me while the other one inspected the wall and claimed that it was too narrow for anyone to fit through. After hearing this, I checked the wall myself and even went as far as to take it apart to realize that he was right. Needless to say, both officers went out of their way to shine their lights and actually look inside. Nothing seemed to be out of the ordinary or misplaced, so I thanked them for their time and they left. It was then where I called my parents, wanting to tell them about what I had seen. However, I must have caught them at a bad time, as they didn't want to hear it and claimed it was just night terrors. Now, I did have night terrors from my childhood that made its way into my adult years, but it was rare for me to have one. The next day, I went out to get drywall to replace the piece of wall I had taken out. I have never believed in the paranormal, but I have no other explanation for what I saw. Nothing has happened since, and I intend for it to remain that way.
When I was about 15, my family and I moved into a new house that was built in the past few years. It was a gorgeous 2-story home with 3 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms, and even a basement. Now, basements weren't anything too special. as they're commonly used, but it was rare to find one in a home in our state. Anyways, my parents worked in the upper medical industry, meaning they'd be out working for the most part, while I am mostly staying at home. Mind you, this was during the peak of the pandemic, so my parents would be workaholics helping patients left and right. The risk of me or a loved one catching the virus was high, and you could imagine the fear we were dealing with. I won't bore you with unnecessary details, so I'll just jump straight into it. This took place around the summertime in late July. My parents were at work as always, and I had stayed home playing video games with a few friends online. We were the type to always mess around and have a good time while playing together. And being 15 while home alone made you want to do whatever you wanted. Anyways, so we're playing for about a good hour or so, when I hear the phone ring. This is weird, as we almost never get any calls, and when we did, they were mainly for my dad. I was told by my dad to never answer the phone, due to the possibility of scammers, which made sense at the end of the day. Therefore, I let it ring while I kept playing until it went to voicemail. However, not even a minute later, it for some reason rang again, to the point where my friends online told me to just pick it up. I could only assume that it had to be an emergency of some type where I had to answer it. I walked over to it and picked it up, where I began to hear breathing of a man. I began to repeatedly say hello into the phone, only to get no response other than the constant breathing. Eventually, I hung up the phone and went back to my game, where it rang again. This time, in a much more annoyed tone, I picked up and asked what the person wanted. It was then when the person from the other end said something along the lines of,
"I'm just waiting for you to come downstairs, Danny."
I felt my whole world shrivel up and die as I heard this, and knew the voice was too deep to be any one of my friends or anyone I knew. A few hours later, my parents came home when I told them about the phone call. My dad, being the tough guy he was, searched the house and found our secondary house phone on the floor and the kitchen window smashed open. I remember my dad calling the cops to investigate, but up until now, there have been no leads in finding out who was in our house that night. While there have been no progress, police were able to track where the call came from. The call came from California. I lived in Indiana, and we didn't know anyone from there. Update, September 14th, 2022. My dad had gotten a call from the police department, with an update from the person who had broken into our house. Apparently, this person was actually homeless, who was caught breaking into another family's house while their daughter was home alone showering. The parents were out on their anniversary with no acknowledgement of what was happening. Turns out, the man had entered the home through an open window, where he went upstairs to find the girl. I won't explain what happened after that, but it wasn't good to say the least. This person is truly messed up in the head, and had been doing this for months, as he is known to mess with his victims, mainly targeting children or anyone he thought was a good target. I'm happy to say that he was arrested and thrown in jail. As of now, that's all the information my family got.
I'm a female who's currently 30 years old, and this took place late last year in early November. My fiance and I had just bought a boating company in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. At the time, we lived in LA, and because we had bought the company, we had to move to Florida to maintain it. Life was kind of what you'd expect for Florida. It rained a lot and was almost tropical during the summer months. If you've been to Florida or lived there, you'll probably relate to what I'm saying. Anyway, we had moved into a large one-storied home appropriate for a family of 4. We didn't have kids, but the house wasn't too expensive and we needed to find a new place. For the first month or so, the move had been well, and we started to adapt to the new environment. In other words, things were going well for the most part. One day, my fiancée had gone into the office while I was homesick with the flu. At one point during the day, I remember going into the kitchen to get a snack to just have something in my stomach. Upon entering the kitchen full of unopened boxes, I for some reason get a weird feeling. It wasn't a bad feeling, but rather a feeling that made me alert or something. You know that feeling you get when you feel like someone's watching you? Yeah, I had that in spades. I hesitate before looking out the sliding glass door to see someone walking around my vegetable garden. By the looks of it, they looked like a younger adult in all black wearing a satchel. Now, this house had a gate on the side that only opened if you had the password. However, the password wasn't working, which indicated that he jumped the fence. The thing that really caught my eye was that he appeared to be pouring something around the garden. My initial instinct was to call my fiancée, but realized that he would get worried and try to take this into his own hands. Without any other options, I pick up the phone to call the police. The operator said they'd try to have someone there soon, but to just stay hidden in the meantime. This person continues to look around the garden as I run to my room and lock my door. All the while, I'm on my bed praying to God that he doesn't come inside or break in. Minutes felt like hours before hearing the police sirens from down the road. They got louder as they pulled into my house, where I then heard some sort of commotion going on. Upon going outside, I see 4 police officers restraining this kid who appeared to be an older teen. However, he didn't try to get away. He kinda just stood there, accepting his defeat. As I spoke with the police, I then learned a shocking truth I didn't expect to hear. While they were restraining him, they managed to find several traces of liquid mercury, which is what he was using to put in our garden. It was then where I called my fiancée, where he had to leave work to come home. Turns out, this teenager was actually our next-door neighbor's son. Both his parents were devastated, apologizing to us for his actions. While we understood their pain, we ended up filing charges against the son for attempted murder. How he got a container of mercury, we have no idea. I'm still very thankful I caught him in the act, as I'm not sure if I'd still be writing this had I eaten the vegetables. He was arrested and put in jail for 10 years according to his parents. Later that same day, his parents had told us that their son was innocent and that he was just looking at our garden. Me nor my fiancée wanted to hear it.